Hello and welcome to another standard video, finally playing on the ranked ladder with this black-red goblins deck, which got a ton of upgrades in Lorwyn Eclipsed, starting at 1 mana with the Mud Button Curse Tosser, a 2/1. As an additional cost to cast it, we do have to behold a goblin, which is usually not a problem. It cannot block, and when it dies, we get to destroy target creature an opponent controls with power 2 or less. So keep in mind it says power 2 or less, not mana value, so it can still potentially take out an Uroboroid even after it picks up an extra +1 counter, which can be huge. Then at 2 mana, we have the Boggart Cursecrafter, a 2/3 with Death Touch, saying whenever another goblin we control dies, this creature deals 1 damage to each opponent. So this is very good in conjunction with any of our token makers that can help us go wide, and now for tokens die, we still get some mileage out of them thanks to the Cursecrafter. And it also pairs very well with the Boggart Mischief, which is a kindred enchantment, so still a goblin that we can maybe behold to a Curse Tosser. When it enters, we have to blight 1. If we do, we get to make a pair of 1/1 goblin tokens. So by blinding 1, we put a -1 counter on a creature we control. Pairs well with the Cursecrafter, since a 1/2 Death Touch is still good enough. And then we get to make a pair of tokens, and now whenever a goblin we control dies, each opponent loses 1 life and we gain 1 life. So that can be another way to slowly whittle away at the opponent's life total, especially good in multiples and also very good in conjunction with a Cursecrafter. And then at 3 mana, we also have 2 copies of the new Taster of Wares, a 3/2. When it enters, target opponent reveals X cards from their hand, where X is the number of goblins we control. So ideally, we have enough goblins to let them reveal their entire hand. And then we get to choose one of those cards, exile it. If it happens to be an instant or sorcery, we also get to cast it for as long as we control the Taster of Wares. But either way, the opponent is not getting their card back. So this can also be very effective against combo decks or against control decks. Being able to take away the opponent's only sweeper, for instance, can easily win us the game. And then we also have the full set of the Scuzzback Scrounger, a 3/2, saying at the beginning of our first main phase, we may blight 1. If we do, make a treasure token. So 2 mana 3/2 is already decent, can apply a good bit of pressure, but getting to make additional treasure tokens is helpful when we're trying to cast some of our more expensive spells, or if we want to double spell more effectively. And by blighting onto the Curse Tosser, we can also enable it to take out an opposing creature, which is another interesting interaction that we can also set up with Boggart Mischief. And then I'm also playing 2 copies of Grub's Command to top off our curve, a 5 mana sorcery, letting us choose 2 of the 4 different modes. And the last mode is the one I'm most interested in, saying target player mills 5 cards and then puts each goblin card milled this way into their hand. Note it doesn't say goblin creature card, so it also hits any of our kindred cards, including additional copies of Grub's Command, which is a kindred sorcery, and all the copies of Boggart Mischief. So this can essentially hit every non-land card in the deck, making this a very reliable source of card advantage, reminiscent of Goblin Ringleader, which unfortunately isn't in standard at the moment, but yeah, being able to chain together multiple copies of Grub's Command is living the dream. And then we get to choose additional modes as well, starting with maybe making a token that's a copy of target goblin we control, very nice with Boggart Cursecrafter. We can also give the team +1/+1 and haste until end of turn, that also applies to any copy we might generate. And then we can also destroy an artifact or creature, so that also gives the deck a little bit more removal. Since overall the deck does have access to a decent amount of interaction, all the 1-drops can double up as removal. There's the Curse Tosser, Firebrand we can tap and sacrifice to deal 1 damage to any target, so it can deal with opposing mana elves and other 1-toughness creatures. And then the Headliner wants us to go wide, and then we can also sacrifice it to deal that much damage to an opposing creature. So all these cards can also help prolong the game, which is where the deck really shines. Once we get multiple Cursecrafters and Mischiefs going, then we don't mind if our creatures keep dying, as long as we can stay alive, prolong the game, and slowly drain the opponent out. And then the Seer Slicer Goblin also helps us go wide, also very good with all the 1-drops to enable raid, so we can start making additional goblin tokens right away. And then at 3 mana, there's the House Squad Heavy, which can also make an additional goblin token, which enters with haste thanks to the House Squad's ability. It is forced to attack, but again, when our creature dies, we still might get some benefit out of it with our various drain effects. And the House Squad is also perfect for setting up a Krenko Mob Boss, which can tap, generating a 1/1 goblin token for each goblin we control. So this can get out of hand very quickly, but without haste, it's sometimes a little slow to get going, so definitely benefits from the House Squad, and that's also why I'm only playing 2 copies, because ending up with multiple copies in hand can be detrimental. And then the mana base also picked up the new Eclipsed Realms, which can make colored mana to cast all our goblin spells, including our kindred enchantments and sorceries. Can also make colored mana to activate abilities, which matters with the Stadium Headliner, whereas Cavern of Souls is still great, of course, making our goblin creatures uncounterable, but this doesn't make colored mana to cast our kindred, sorceries, and enchantments, so we still need additional black sources mostly to help cast those, but that's also where the Blood Crypt will come in handy, now back in Standard. Also have the Blazemire Verge and the Swamps, and alongside the Eclipsed Realms we'll have enough black mana to cast a Mischief and Command, and that leaves room for one Soulstone Sanctuary, which can turn into a 3/3 creature with Vigilance that has all creature types, including Goblin. So that's our deck. Now let's jump into some games and see how the deck does. Okay, we're on the play with a functional hand. Firebrand into Scrounger, into Howl Squad, and then, yeah, hopefully we'll draw some more impactful goblins. Opponent red-white, so it could be more controlling. I see Jeskai. This could be a tough one. So, I'm not going to show them Cavern of Souls just yet. In case they decide to keep up a counterspell next turn, I can make my goblin uncounterable. Now I'm starting to be worried about sweepers. Alright, so the Mischief is actually pretty useful here. So I'm gonna decline. And then Mischief, I cannot make uncounterable with Cavern, so I do want to resolve it this turn while I can. So we'll attack first. And then Blight. So now a Sweeper at least will also drain the opponent with a Mischief. And then next turn we can make an uncounterable Howl Squad, adding on to the pressure. A lot of tap lands from the opponent, maybe hasn't upgraded their mana base to the new shock lands. And Command's also very good in a grindier matchup. Do I want to make a treasure? I could. Just blight onto a token here. Opponent's holding priority. Let's try this. So we get our treasure. And then could try Howl Squad, although it seems like it's going to get taken out as soon as I cast it. Or I could try this, but it's probably going to be second main then. If they remove one of my creatures, and then I can still, I guess, mill, hoping to find some goblins. And then I could still make a copy of a Scrounger, I suppose. Assuming they haven't removed it. I guess we can also copy the Mischief, that's actually pretty useful. Alright, so let's just attack. See what happens. And then, Fire Magic. 1 to each creature. So now if I go for Grub's Command, I cannot blight to make additional goblin tokens is the only issue. So what's my plan? I think it's still worth going for. Copy and mill. While the coast is clear. Alright, and we hit 4 goblins, so can't complain. Now I've got double Mischief. Opponent's at 9. They're gonna tap out for stock up. Still haven't played Cavern, so we'll see if that ends up being relevant later. Well, I feel like we just go Howl Squad, double Curse Tosser, and that should be pretty much game over. I guess if they have Ultima, they can make it so the triggers from my creatures dying don't happen, because it just ends the turn. But we still get a pretty nice attack in here. So yeah, 4 goblins in play with double Mischief. So trying to destroy them now is probably not the answer. Day of Judgment, and yeah, opponent takes 8. Alright, so some of these new goblin cards definitely coming in handy. On to the next one. Okay, we're on the draw with functional hands. Curse Tosser into Sear Slicer. Don't have much going on in the middle part of the game so far. Opponent ramping with Pollinator, so yeah, Curse Tosser is going to have some targets if it dies. And if the board stalls out, Krenko will be very effective too if our opponent doesn't have an answer. But our opponent could have a very explosive start with Badger Mole Cub, and then we might be dead before we even get to that stage. For now, Quantum Riddler. Could tap it for a mana. So not the scariest start, all things considered. Now, I think I'm still fine attacking to enable Sear Slicer, even if it's maybe not the most desirable trade. We did just draw another copy, so that might be fine. Opponent accepts. Now Tyvar can't make itself indestructible yet, so I can play Cursecrafter, attack, play Curse Tosser, or we can go for Scrounger to guarantee extra mana to get Krenko down. I think I actually like that more, and then I guess there's no real downside to attacking with a 1/1. Opponent might fear a burn spell taking out Tyvar. Alright, so get an extra token. Next turn, probably Blight onto Scrounger, unless our opponent plays something we can destroy. Even an Ouroboros would count. With the extra counter, still has 2 power. So then Scrounger blighting onto Curse Tosser would be pretty neat. It's gonna be the Librarian. That one survives. So Scrounger blights on itself. And yeah, we'll just go for Krenko. Possible our opponent has a Drowner to lock down Krenko for a while. Now they could make Tyvar indestructible, so there's no real risk to blocking for them. So yeah, we'll see. If they can't answer Krenko, we can very quickly take over the board. So again, it's possible they have Ouroboros in hands, but they just weren't able to deploy it yet. So that's why having a Blight enabler for the Curse Tosser can also be important. Opponent just casting a Riddler. Of course, they do have some large flyers, so those are still threatening. Alright, so can Blight onto Krenko, since that's just going to be tapping to activate. And then, what are we looking at? Can double spell Cursecrafter and Scrounger, which can next turn set up the command. So I'll cast these now to activate Krenko. And then we're fine to attack with at least 1 token to make another one. We get a replacement, we trigger Cursecrafter, so might as well. And then next turn I get to Blight, maybe cast Grub's commands to pump the team. Opponent could activate Tyvar, pump their flyers, but we're not in danger of dying. Okay, so take 15 in the air. I guess if they have a giant growth, I'm dead. And our opponent scoops it up. Awesome. So yeah, I wouldn't be surprised to see Uroboroid in the opponent's hand, but they just never got a chance to play it. On to the next one. Okay, we're on the play with a keepable hand. Start with probably the headliner. Next turn can attack for 2. Opponent also a red-black. Is it a mirror match? It looks like it. Alright, so this says when it dies, destroy a creature with power 2 or less. So I'm not going to want to play Cursecrafter first. I don't think I want to necessarily play Firebrand and trade for both of my creatures. So I could just attack with a headliner and then maybe play Firebrand second main. I guess this one also cannot block. Keeping Firebrand back just in case they have a Seer Slicer Goblin that they won't be able to get going now. Take 2. Alright, Seer Slicer I'm gonna wanna take out with a Firebrand now before it triggers. So that's why we left it back. Alright, so Taster of Wares we might want to wait on a little bit longer. Could try Howl Squad, although it could still get removed by the Curse Tosser if they have a way to maybe blight onto it. Although it still seems like the more mana efficient play. And then that's going to help build up our goblins for the Taster of Wares. Opponents got their own Howl Squad. So I get to block the token. Alright, so could be a fine turn for Taster of Wares. Could also go for Cursecrafter and then still activate Headliner thanks to the Eclipsed Realms. That seems pretty good. So go to attacks. Attack. Make a token. And then before blockers, take this out. Yeah, I have to be careful since Cavern of Souls doesn't make red mana to activate Headliner. Opponent falls to 5. And they've got their own Headliner. And a Mischief can now blight onto the Curse Tosser. Take out Heavy or Cursecrafter. Alright, so game's not over yet. Now I can cast Grub's commands, copy Cursecrafter, and pump the team. That seems pretty good. And then double Cursecrafter helps offset the Mischief. Although it is tempting to go find additional goblins with the last mode here as well. But let's go for the more aggressive line. Alright, our opponent has given up. On to the next one. Okay, we're on the draw with a functional hand, just missing a 1-drop. Facing turn 1 Plains and Survivor, so the mono-white Aura deck. Not an amazing matchup, I'll be honest. That's where having some instant speed removal, like the new Requiting Hex, would be very helpful. Opponent off to a quick start. And yeah, between Sheltered by Ghosts and Seam Rip, my 2-drop is unlikely to stick around. If it does, I guess Cursecrafter has the best blocks available. Although I don't know if I want to give it up. Can curve Howl Squad into Krenko, which can help go wide. So I guess if they have to use Sheltered by Ghosts, it's maybe still okay. But if they have a Seam Rip, it's gonna feel bad. Alright, they don't have any of them. So this seems like just a Shard Mage's Rescue, which would give them essentially +2/+2 if they wanted. Would still be a trade. I guess they can rescue on one, counter on the other, still hit me for 3. I'll take it. Anything else, second main? Nope. Alright, so our plan could still work out. They could block and then use their Shard Mage's Rescue. Possible they have more than one in hand. But yeah, Krenko can very quickly go wide for us. So as long as they don't give their creatures flying with a Feather of Flight, we should be okay. And I want to preserve my goblins for Krenko, so I can afford to take 3 here. Even though trade would be reasonable. Cursed Tosser also good with a Scrounger. If we blind onto it, we can maybe destroy an opposing creature. But if we suspect more rescues, then I don't think we want to play into them. Just go for Krenko. Wait to make an extra token with Howl Squad, go full control just in case. And then now we can activate Krenko when we have the most tokens possible. And we could start getting aggressive, but yeah, Krenko with haste turns out to be pretty effective. On to the next one. Okay, we're on the draw with a functional hand. Opponent with turn 1 Swamp. May want to wait on Cursed Tosser until there's a creature on the battlefield it can remove. So I can start with Firebrand, attack for 1. And no Hex. Alright, I see Lizards with Gav. Has 3 powers, so cannot remove it with a Cursed Tosser. But we can play Cursecrafter or Scrounger. Both are reasonable options. I guess we'll go for Scrounger first. Still threatens to trade for Gav. Maybe a little weaker in the face of a burn spell dealing 2 damage to it compared to a Cursecrafter. Alright, opponent with May. It's not gonna trigger a whole lot in this matchup. Opponent passes. I get to Blight. And then now could go for Howl Squad plus Cursed Tosser. Yeah, that seems okay. And then blinding onto the Cursed Tosser can also be a way of enabling it. If they made the mistake of blocking with Gav, I could have finished it off with a Firebrand. Okay. Could have also attacked with a Cursed Tosser, and then if they block it with May, I get to take it out. And then the 1/1 might have connected, so yeah, maybe Cursed Tosser before attacking would have made sense. Fireglass Mentor. I'll use Firebrand to remove. Although never mind, it enters with a +1 counter, of course. So that doesn't quite work. So they will get the card advantage for Mentor. Finds a land. So at least that goes to waste. Not drawing what I was hoping for. So I am struggling to make progress on the board now. I guess I can still attack. Fine trading Cursecrafter for any of the opponent's creatures. Possible they have a second Gav in hand. And then Cursed Tosser essentially trades for me. Yep, that makes sense. But now I can use Firebrand to finish off Mentor. Opponent's got another May. And a Magebane Lizard, so a lot of anti-non-creature spell cards here. Very good against the Lesson deck. And I'll take the trade. Seer Slicer's not bad. Still making progress thanks to the Cursecrafter. Alright. Could use a nice top deck like Krenko or the 5 mana Command. Battler from the opponent into another Magebane. Opponent could get more aggressive, but decides to pass it back. Another Howl Squad is excellent. I think we're just sending in the tokens that are forced to attack. But they will generate another token, drain with a Cursecrafter. So, despite this technically being a board stall, we're still making progress. We're at max speed as well. Howl Squad can tap for mana. Although we've got mana aplenty. Still gonna play the land, because if we draw the command, I might be able to find a whole bunch of goblins that I can still cast in the same turn. Although I guess we're not drawing a land in that case, so maybe it doesn't matter. Mischief is excellent too. Even though they get some triggers here. And I think we can send in all the 1/1s. Every goblin that dies drains for 2. So yeah, that should be game. GG's. Just not quite the right matchup for a Magebane Lizard here. Sweet, on to the next one. Okay, we're on the draw with a functional hand. Well, let's see what we're up against. Fabled Passage, maybe a Landfall deck. Firebrand could be an answer to Mossborn Hydra before it grows. But our opponent's getting a Swamp. So what do we want to play turn 1? I think I'm leaning Firebrand. Just because if I go for Curse Tosser and they remove it, I didn't get any value from it. So there's a Rampy deck. So then I get to attack, play Seer Slicer. Opponent's most likely going to have a Sweeper in there somewhere. So I don't have very high hopes for Krenko. Opponent gets their second black. Alright, so next turn they could go land cover up. So then the question is, do I hold back? Yeah, they probably have the cover up in hand, but they didn't play a land last turn, so they might just be missing one land for it. Yeah, tough spot. I think I'll throw one Firebrand into the mix. And then we'll see where we're at. Alright, Day of the Black Sun also works. Alright, now Howl Squad gives us a pretty nice way to enable Krenko. And I can now go for Hasty Curse Tosser. Does not seem like our opponent's going to have many creatures that I can destroy with it. Do they have a second Sweeper? I hope not. They could also have spot removal for the heavy. I still explore, makes sense. Get your fetch land back. See the Bloomvine Regent, some more ways to ramp. They might be playing the new Tree Folk enchantment. So their opponent's going off. Next turn they'll definitely have enough mana to do whatever they want. Bitter Triumph also milled, so they could have one in hand to take out the heavy. Stormbrood is going to take care of it instead. At least if the Curse Tosser dies, it also deals with the Explorer. So, step 1, just attack with Curse Tosser. Opponent takes the trade. And then I'll just play Krenko. I don't think I need to play Firebrain just yet. Our opponent had another Bitter Triumph, discarding Esper Origins. So now we're kind of on empty. Would be a great spot to find our command to find more goblins. A Rise of Sozin hits the graveyard. Well, ask and you shall receive. So I can destroy their summon Esper and then I'll look for some goblins, I guess. And yeah, we found 4. So very helpful in these grindier matchups. Still have a long way to go. Bloomvine's a decent blocker, gains them more life. And a Scavenging Ooze. And they have a green mana up. And that's going to make a huge difference, otherwise Curse Tosser, taken out by my own Firebrain, could have answered it. Now I can still play it, and then we'll see if they respond or not. Play a Howl Squad. Nothing suspicious. Okay, so now if they try and activate Ooze, I can destroy it in response. But if they're thinking about it, they could untap and have more green mana available first. Alright, our opponent fell for it. Because if I played a second Firebrain, they definitely would have untapped first, so I could only present one. Now it may not matter, opponent's still taking over with these Bloomvines. But at least we don't have to contend with a huge Scavenging Ooze. Another Esper Origins, mills Explorer. And our opponent's on the beatdown plan now. Well, a little late for the Taster of Wares when our opponent's empty-handed. Can still play Howl Squad. It is still a 3-2, but I think we may as well wait now. Possible our opponent top decks a Sweeper, but doesn't want to cast it since they're the ones ahead on board. And this is not a race we're winning. Opponent's got us on a 2-turn clock. Another Ice Still. Yeah, my only hope was our opponent top decking a Sweeper and then sniping it with the Taster of Wares. But at this point, that's no longer happening. Restless Cottage, also a nice combo with Basing Say. If you animate it with Earthbending, you don't even need to activate the cottage to get the food token out of it. And yeah, there's the Sapling Nursery. That's the card I mentioned earlier. So that plus Explorer can kind of go crazy. Opponent decides to hit the brakes because they're winning the late game anyway, so they didn't feel the need to attack for 8, which is fair. Taster still doesn't do anything for me. So yeah, we are probably dying in a turn or 2 here. Could have maybe top decked a Krenko, and that plus Howl Squad could have done something, but probably still not fast enough. Alright, I mean, they did give us an extra turn by not attacking with the Regents, so maybe now they'll top deck their board wipe. which was maybe a reason to hold back with the Scrounger. Another Stormbrood instead. Now they're making Tree Folk. So this one didn't quite work out for us, sadly. But still, showcase the power of the command. Even if it wasn't quite enough. Opponent's got multiple board wipes. Some nice ramp. This matchup could have been winnable with a faster start, of course, if they don't have the sweeper. But once we get to the later stages, we're just gonna fall further and further behind. Didn't draw any for drain effects, but opponents also been gaining a ton of life. So they were never really in danger. And a Seer Slicer is not going to make the difference. Alright, GG's. And we are dead. Opponent gets to pump the team as well. And there we go. On to the next one. Okay, we're on the draw with a keepable hand. My removal takes a little bit of setup here with a headliner. So we could get overwhelmed by a fast start. Opponent blue-black. So they could be keeping up the Hex. I guess I don't show them Cavern yet, in case they want to keep up Spell Snare next turn. Opponent's gonna opt. So blue-black with an opt. Still not quite sure what to make of it. Could be fairies, I suppose. Although, don't know if that deck has a ton of room for opts. For now, tapped a Restless Reef. Alright, so pretty straightforward attack, and then I think Seer Slicer over Scrounger. And we can make things uncounterable in case they have a Spell Snare, which can counter our 2-drop. Did not seem like they were holding priority there. Could have gone for Scrounger to try and set up a turn 3 Krenko, but against blue-black, I don't think that plan is likely to work out. So for now we're just getting our board developed. Possible our opponent's eventually going to cast a board wipe. I'm not sure if they're more of a control deck or maybe they have a reanimation angle. Okay, so we'll just go to attackers and probably play another Seer Slicer. Opponent's gonna take out the first one. And then next turn we could try Krenko, but again, don't have high hopes for it surviving and getting a chance to activate. At 5 mana they could also have a board wipe, so we might want to leave Krenko as a leftover. Alright, Bitter Triumph takes out Seer Slicer, discarding Doomsday Excruciator. Alright, so they're probably planning to mill us out with it. They could essentially reanimate it using Kivero. So given that they've taken out both Seer Slicers, I don't think they're necessarily hanging on to a sweeper here. So maybe feel more comfortable playing Krenko after all. And if they remove it, so be it. A good sideboard card against Reanimator decks for goblins specifically would be the Soul Cauldron, since you can also maybe end up exiling your own Krenko to give its ability to your other goblins. Yeah, there's a Monument, one of their mill cards. And then at 6 mana they also have a Sweeper that mills half of our deck. Right now I might be better off attacking with Krenko instead of activating it, since we don't have any of those effects that drain the opponent for goblins dying, which would otherwise make me reconsider. But yeah, it is possible that they have the 5 mana board wipe next turn, so this is a tough call to make. If I just attack, I'm hitting for 7, opponent falls to 2. That feels pretty good to me. Suppose I could have instant speed removal in hand. Nope, opponent's just gonna mill with monuments. Yeah, Cursecrafter would go nicely here. So then I don't really see a reason to play anything else out in case I do top deck a Sweeper. We have enough pressure on the board. Don't think our opponent's gonna gain life in any meaningful way. And yeah, that does it. Opponent may be missing a land drop or two. On to the next one. Okay, we're on the play. We have a functional hand. Eclipsed Realms helps cast a Mischief, and then we've got a solid curve. Having that 1-drop is important for enabling raid. But it can also double up as removals, so it's still okay in grindier matchups. Alright, so I think I go for Seer Slicer over Scrounger. Blue-green could be some sort of Banjo Mold deck, so then developing my mana could also be worth it. But this is a good opportunity to start going wide. And that also makes the Headliner's ability more impactful if we need to take something out. Do we see a Banjo Mole? We do not. Possible they're sitting on a Floodpit's Drowner. I think this turn we probably Scrounger just to get our mana going. See if they have any plays here. Yep, there's a Drowner. Could also take it out with a Firebrand, to be fair. And smart move not to tap down the Seer Slicer since they're happy to trade for it. But I'll just send the 1/1. Still enables a raid. Can still activate the Headliner to take out something scary. So just blue-green so far. Maybe Merfolk, maybe a Grim Captain deck. Those might make a resurgence with all the new changelings. Tyvar points towards just kind of your blue-green Banjo Mold deck. Okay, so we get to blind to make a treasure. This seems like an okay turn for Cursecrafter. So we at least get to drain for 1 when we send a goblin to its death. Interestingly, I could also attack with Scrounger. But they can just, yeah, make Tyvar indestructible, so I wouldn't be able to finish off with Firebrand. So yeah, I think we just send in a 1/1. Could send in 2 1/1s, I guess. Since they only get to block 1 profitably. And then I'll keep my treasure as opposed to playing Firebrand. So we're still making progress. Mischief doesn't mind blinding onto the Cursecrafter. And there's Ouroboros, which will get a chance to trigger. Could still use Headliner to answer it, or now we could cast Grub's Command. So do I care about Ouroboros? I probably still do. So then the question is Headliner versus just Grub's Command. At this point probably copy Cursecrafter. Yeah, that seems pretty good. While the opponent's tapped out. Want to do it before attacks, so we get extra Cursecrafter triggers as well. Okay, and then how aggressive do I get? Yeah, I don't think we send anything except for a 1/1. If I send Cursecrafter again, they can block, make indestructible. And even though we get to drain for 2, once I play Mischief, we get to drain even more when our creatures die, so might as well. Alright, now Druneth into potentially something to trigger it right away. Paw Patch Recruit. Alright, so now targeting their creatures is less appealing when they get a bunch of +1 counters. Still happy to Blight. And then I could Mischief onto a Goblin token, or we can keep Blighting onto Cursecrafters. Probably fine to go for the token at this point, as we get to immediately drain for 2 as well. And now 3 thanks to the Mischief. Can still send in a token. Also have Headliner available. Now they could activate Tyvar next turn. They have a bunch of Tramplers, but we should still be fine. So I guess I'll play Firebrand still. And we can activate if needed, but this is probably just going face and draining for 3. So then our opponent's actually pretty close to dead. Possible I could have gotten more aggressive and finished them off. Badger Mole is fine. One card left in hand, so can't think of much that kills me. Opponent is getting more aggressive since they know time's up. So they can still activate Tyvar, giving their team +4/+4. So could line up some blocks. But again, any of my creatures that die also drain the opponent for a whole bunch. So I guess the smart play would be Firebrand on Pummeler, and then Firebrand can finish off Recruit. And the rest shouldn't really matter, if I'm being completely honest. They will get an extra counter here, or 2 from the Recruits. But Tyvar's already blocked. Yeah, I guess by getting the counters on Tyvar, they got to pump the team a little bit more. But yeah, opponent still dies with all the triggers here. Alright, and that'll do it. So we get to see this red-black Goblins deck in action, and yeah, overall the deck seems to be able to hold its own on the current ranked ladder, even if it's not necessarily the highest win rate deck out there. It's still capable of some pretty fast starts, so it can punish stumbles from the opponent, while still being able to play a decent late game, especially if there's a board stall happening. We're pretty comfortable with our Boggart Mischief and Cursecrafter slowly whittling away at the opponent's life total, and Grub's Command is also very nice if you need to refuel. So when it comes to best of 3, if you're interested in trying this in traditional standard, the deck also will have access to some pretty decent sideboard options, additional copies of Grub's Command for those grindy games, Taster of Wares if you need to take away a key sweeper from a control deck, or perhaps a reanimation spell from a combo deck, that can also come in handy, and you could also play some dedicated graveyard hate like Agatha's Soul Cauldron, which also has additional synergy with your own goblins, especially Krenko is a nice one to exile, so now all your goblins can activate its ability. And there's also the Hexing Squelcher, which can also punish the opponent for using counter spells or targeting our creatures with spot removal. So that's another card that can come in against more controlling strategies. So overall, the deck seems to have most angles covered, especially after sideboard. In the main deck configuration, it will be pretty weak to some dedicated graveyard combo decks, and control decks, especially if they can deal with our enchantment, can also potentially overpower us. But for now, it seems like a pretty decent deck. So that's going to do it for me today. I want to thank you for watching, hope you enjoyed, and as always, have a nice day.